So Craig Mottram, who is arguably Australia's greatest ever distance runner, was once asked, "What's your philosophy of coaching?" And this was his response.
That's a shit question.
So with that in mind, here's my philosophy of coaching. Not really. Coaching is more than just a simple slogan. It's more than just a catchy phrase or a single set of beliefs or a 6-stage system, whatever. It's a really complex combination. It's a complex system of balancing your experience, the contemporary research, traditional knowledge, and applying that to an individual and taking an individual and helping them reach that next step based on all of the combination of all of those factors and how they respond to those. Coaching is about going beyond just applying a specific formula. I'm just beginning my life as a coach. I avoided it for a long, long time because I thought I didn't know enough and I didn't have enough value to give to people. After doing this for about 12 months, I've seen there is a group of people that I can give advice to, and I do have a lot of knowledge and a lot to give to that group of people, but that knowledge is constantly evolving, and the minute it stops evolving and turns into a solid philosophy, so to speak, then I'll probably lost the point of what I'm trying to do. The whole point of this video is to share with you how I currently view the world of running coaching, how I think about the research and my experience and how we get runners to improve. And I apply this to myself and I apply this to others that I coach as well, and manipulate this thinking to suit the needs of my athletes. I'm a teacher at heart, so everything for me that I try to explain is visual. Here's the visual for the way I view coaching. So if we were to draw a graph and had our speed or how fast we can run up one part of the graph, and then on the other side of the graph, the amount of time that we can hold that speed. Well, for just about everybody, there is a certain curve. For myself, that curve might look like this, where you can hold a fast pace for a little while, then there's a big dip, and then there's a certain set of paces that you can hold for a lot longer, and then there's a sharp dip at the end. For some runners, it looks more like this. They don't have that faster pace, but they have less of a dip and they can go for a lot longer. Everybody is different, and that's one of the key things to being a running coach, is knowing there is not one graph for everybody. It is all individual. So with that in mind, if we think about a typical graph like this one, there's 3 distinct zones where we're trying to improve our capability as a runner. The first one, and probably the most important one, is we are trying to gently lift this last zone of how long we can hold that easy pace, or that last pace, that the longest we can actually run for. And we're trying to push that up. And we do that with longer, slower paced workout. That's why Sunday long runs are so important. They don't have to happen on a Sunday, by the way. They can happen any day of the week, but that idea of running longer than you do every other day, just to extend how much time you can spend at that little zone. If we just push that up, in a lot of runners, what we end up with is some level of improvement in their curve, because we've increased their ability to run for longer. The next thing that we think about, this is one that I lean into a little bit heavier than others, this threshold zone, which is somewhere, and again, it depends on the person, but it's somewhere here, and we're trying to push up this middle zone. It's known as the lactate threshold zone because it's the point at which your body can no longer flush out the lactate faster than it is producing it. So anytime you're running faster than that, you are producing more lactate than your body can flush out. Anytime you're running slower than that, you are producing less lactate than your body can flush out, so you are flushing that lactate more regularly. So what we're trying to do with that is, again, we're trying to push that pace up, see what that speed is. I tend to set pace zones for this with my beginning runners, because what I find is that people get this sort of run and they do it too hard and they go too fast, and we lose all benefit that we get from it. So by slowing these down and restricting them to a certain zone and teaching them that feeling by giving them a certain zone, what we're doing is we're pushing this up. What we tend to see is an improvement in both their threshold and their aerobic. In an ideal world, we're working on both systems within a training cycle. And in an even more ideal world, once we've got an experienced runner, we then want to work on this top end speed. We want to push that up, because if we can push that up, then we can push the whole graph up as well. It becomes a lot more comfortable to work at threshold pace and work in that threshold zone. It becomes a hell of a lot more comfortable to run at an easy pace. So that is our VO2 max sort of work, and that's our faster pace work. The reason why I've put that in red though is because that's the most likely space for you to get injured as a runner when you're training. So that's the spot where we've got to be the most careful and the most deliberate. And as we go along, we can think about how much time we spend in each of those spaces. Aerobic is where we want to spend the bulk of our time, as much of our time as possible. And then our threshold, we want to spend a bit of time there. And then we want to spend a really small amount of time at VO2 max, trying to push that top end of the curve up. And what we can do when we push all three of those zones up is we end up pushing the person's graph up. And what we end up with by doing those three bits of work is we push that person's ability to run at whatever pace that they're aiming for. And then we can tweak that and the amount of time we spend in each of those depending on the event that they're working for and depending on where their strength lies. For me, my strength lies in this zone. My strongest event is a 3K or 5K. I'm better at this than I am at this. I'm better at running 5Ks than I am at running marathons. What I tend to do is I lean more into marathon pace threshold sort of workout and aerobic to push myself up in this zone and do a tiny little bit of work. For a lot of beginning runners, they don't have that. They have the opposite. There are a lot of runners, and especially there are some female runners that I work with who are absolutely incredible and so inspiring because they can go all day. They can tick their legs over all day long. And what I find is that by doing a bit of work at threshold and a bit of work, a really little bit of work on their speed and technique, then we can get them ticking those legs over that little bit more efficiently and feeling a little bit more comfortable to then fly. So when I'm talking about the craft of a coach and when I'm talking about what coaching actually is, well, it's not a simple set of principles. It's applying that knowledge and being able to find, well, where does this person need to work? And I'll share a couple of examples. So my first example is me in 2023. I had a reasonable parkrun time, but my 10K time was absolutely poor. And what I was finding was that I was getting to the 7K mark of any 10K race. I was absolutely falling to pieces. But what I also noticed is that I had a pretty serious drop off. And so I could go to a point, I could run half marathons, I could run 10K races, but I'd fall in a hole after a certain point and I couldn't go any further. So the first thing I set out to do was increase my long run and making it a new normal to get used to doing long runs. So I spent a lot of time working on my aerobic zone. So what I found was that my drop off got that little bit further on. It still exists and I still fall off a cliff. But what I found was that by just increasing my long run, I increased my ability to run faster over 5K and 10K. Then the next piece of work that I did was I really focused on getting that threshold right and doing a lot of work at threshold. And I actually stopped doing VO2 max workouts and did 2 threshold workouts a week. And what I found, because I was trying to get better at a 10K while I was trying to get better at a 5K, was while my pace didn't increase, what I found was that I ended up increasing that and the drop-off became much less severe. So that work here to push me up here had a whole host of benefits. So my 10K time improved, my half marathon time improved significantly, and my ability to finish off a race. Every half marathon I'd run to that point, I got to the end and I was dead. I was absolutely cooked. Whereas when I ran my half marathon halfway through 2023, I was full of running at the end and I ran the sub 4 minute Ks for the last 2 Ks. That's just one example of the craft of a coach and how you can hone in on specific areas to work on and build capability. And that's just me. Other people are different. By getting to know clients and getting to work with people, that you can start to understand and work with them specifically. So do you need a coach? If you do, there's a link down below to Ignite Endurance, the group who I do through all my coaching through. You can see the different packages that we offer. If you're interested, fill out the inquiry form, hit up Nick, he'll get in contact with you, ask for Andrew, and we'll go from there. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it and hope you got some value out of it. If you've got any questions or comments, please leave them down below. I'd love to have a chat with you about everything I've shared here. If something's not clear, ask a question, because I might not have explained it well. Anyway, thanks very much. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.